Alright everybody, here we are. Let me share the screen as well, just a sec. And the thing is that this is actually gonna be a quick live. I will not be able to live for a long, mainly because I'll have to go after 10 minutes. But the thing is that initially, I've been stuck like this for a couple of days, and initially I thought, okay, let's be live when you have proper time. And then I just thought that why not be live whenever you get any amount of time. So it will be great, right? So right now I'm gonna be just live just for 10 minutes only. It's gonna be a quick one, but here we will be just discussing some of the things. So I just covered some things related to vertical scaling, so we will be just simply talking about them. But before that, let me do one thing, just a sec, and it will be done. Alrighty, this thing is done, and I hope I'm audible right now. Okay. Alrighty, let's continue from here on. So I hope you can see my screen right now, and yeah, of course you can. So I was just simply, how am I speaking? Okay, I was just simply learning some things about vertical scaling, and the very first thing that I learned about clusters, and they are mainly used for a kind of running a file in many threads. So ultimately, if there are many threads available, so all those threads are going to be used. So ultimately, there's going to be a cluster file, main primary file. That file will run, and the cluster will be forking the threads, and once the threads are forked, then the forking means this file will run again. And when this file is actually running again, at that time the another part, because if the cluster is running for the first time, ultimately this file is running for the first time, at that time cluster.isPrimary is gonna be true. That simply means this particular part is gonna run, and this part is mainly gonna fork the fork the threads, if I'm not wrong. And okay, and once the threads are forked, after that whenever how am I gonna explain this thing? Okay, so when a thread is forked, this file runs again, and when this file runs again, at that time is the cluster.isPrimary actually becomes false, and when this becomes false, this simply means the second part, else part, is gonna run. So this is the simple thing. Just a sec, give me a moment. Alrighty, so I hope it's not clear yet, and let it be. Okay, so this is the simple thing. So I have my cluster over here, I have my OS over here. OS comes from OS, of course, and this is a natively available package, and with the help of this OS I can actually know about the CPUs of my PC. So os.cpus gives me the array of all the CPUs, and I can just simply get the length. And the thing is that I have to generate as many threads, or I have to fork as many threads as there are CPUs cores available in my PC. And then I get the CPU cores, and once I've got the CPU cores, so I will be just forking those many clusters, and once I forked them, even when I exit them, so this is gonna be running. Ultimately what I'm doing, I'm just simply if there's any cluster that exists, so suppose I forked 10 clusters, okay, so this the same file ran 10 times, but the second else part ran at that time. So 10 clusters or 10 threads are actually running right now, and if one of those threads exits, so this particular event will be triggered, and ultimately I'm just simply forking a new cluster again. So it's like I have to run as many clusters as there are threads in my I have to run as many threads using cluster as there are cores in my CPU, and as per that I'm just simply gonna be forking them. And the next time when this cluster.fork is a cluster is forked, at that time this file runs again. At that time cluster.isPrimary becomes false. That simply means this particular part is gonna run, and this part is gonna run simply means your main index.js is running, and inside this index.js you have just your kind of business logic, whatever you want you can have that. So this is the basic thing that you can just actually have, and this is how you can just implement fork kind of threading in JS, because JavaScript is a single threaded language, it's not a multi-threaded. So using clusters, this particular functionality can be achieved. This is the first thing. The second thing was this, that what can I actually say, that suppose I have to calculate I have to calculate the sum of very big number, right? So if I just go with the single threaded way, so ultimately that particular process will only use a single thread. That simply means it will take long time. But if that is a really big number, and if I make it a multi-threaded process, so one process will be using multiple cores. That simply means that it will be able to just get the job done quickly, right? If one thread is fully consumed, another thread is going to be used, and if that's really a big number, so there are gonna be multiple yeah, it can be like that. So ultimately what will happen, that suppose I have 10 threads or maybe 8 threads, 8 cores in my CPU, and right now 8 clusters are gonna be forked. 8 clusters are gonna be forked. That simply means that the same file is running 8 times, and at that time, though this particular process is actually running on 8000 port if I'm not wrong. So if I actually have a look at this over here, so whenever, not 8000, it runs on some port if I'm not wrong. Just a sec, let me even be sure about it. Okay, this is not an express server, so ultimately it doesn't really matter which I mean, is there any port or not, because ports are needed in an express server. So if there were any express server at that time, that express server would be running on a port. That simply means that if you cannot run anything else on the same port, that simply means using cluster you can just fork it, and forking means it will kind of generate new ports for you, and ultimately all those processes are gonna be running on the same port, but ultimately some child level ports are gonna be, so main file is running on suppose 3000 port, and then there are gonna be children forked, and those children are gonna be running some kind of child level ports. That's it. This is how it actually happens. And in this case, of course, we will not have that port related issue, because of course this is not running on some kind of port right now. So this is just simply a file, and once I run it for the first time, it simply forks those many clusters, and once the clusters are forked, and that's it. Then I'm calculating the numbers, and when calculating the numbers, I'm actually giving chunks of those some chunk of the whole calculation part, and this is how 10 clusters or 8 clusters are handling just a small chunk of that big process, and this is how things are gonna be getting done. I know it's get confusing, but I'm barely able to just even explain this thing, but never mind. Alrighty, so what I'm actually doing over here, that I'm simply calculating the number of CPUs, and this is the target. Like until this particular point, I have to calculate the sum, and chunk size is gonna be mat.floor target divided by number.CPUs. And of course, I'm using floor over here. That means the minimum part is gonna be taken. What is the use of this? The simple thing is that suppose I have this 1 million and I have 10 CPUs. So the chunk size is gonna be 100,000 if I'm not wrong. So this is 1 billion. So 1 million, right? Just a sec. So if I actually divide it by 100, number of CPUs 10, so it is actually gonna be this much. So इकाई, दहाई, सैकड़ा, हजार, 10,000, लाख, 10 लाख, करोड़, 10 करोड़, 10 crore. How am I calculating? 10 to the power 6 is 1 billion, 1 million. So 10 to the power 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. But only when I divide by 100. I'm confused. Look, 10 to the power 6 is gonna be 1 million. 10 to the power 9 is gonna be 1 billion, right? So ultimately, what will I have? I will have, suppose I have 10 cores in my CPU. Okay, the alarm rang. I have to go right now, but never mind. I'll be back and then continue from here on. Suppose I have 10 cores in my CPU. In that case, I will have 100 million. Yeah, that's right. I'll have 100 million part. So this is gonna be the chunk, 100 million part of the whole process, and then till 100 million I will be calculating in one thread. Then from 100 million to second 100 million, matlab 200 million, the second thread will be just handling that. So it's like I'm calculating the things, but that particular one process, like calculating the things from 1 million to 1000 million. So it is actually being divided into chunks, and those chunks are being handled by different threads. So if you have multiple threads, those multiple threads are gonna be used. If you don't divide it into chunks, then the same process is gonna be used by only one thread, one core, and the remaining cores are gonna be of no use, because they'll be just doing nothing. They'll be just simply they will actually have nothing to do, so they will do nothing. Okay, and what you are actually doing is, so ultimately you are actually forking the like forks cluster, ultimately forking the cluster in the sense this file will run again, and once this file actually runs again, as per that this kind of chunk is given to that particular thread, and once that particular thread got the starting point and the ending point, it will calculate the sum, it will give you the sum, and at the end you will gather all the sum and then return the sum. It is definitely confusing, I get it, but I'll be back and then just re-explaining all these things. Not only that, I have to rewrite it on my own, so it's not like explaining it enough, because once I haven't written the code on my own, there's no use just being able to explain. So yeah, first of all I need to recap it, I have to re-explain it, and then I have to rewrite it. Once I have done both the things, then I will be switching or moving to the next one. Alrighty, then that was it for now. I know I'm actually have to I'm supposed to be going somewhere right now, so I'm gonna be back after getting that particular work done. Until then, take care. I'll be back within 10 minutes only. So it was just quick live, and I'll be back and then continue the quick live again. And this is how things are gonna be going on. Can't really do anything, there are no members in my family right now, so I will have to manage the stuff. I'm gonna be back. Take care. Just a sec.